All right, let's go. Can Sean Payton fix Russell Wilson?
He can't, and that's with a capital T. As much as I love Russ, I don't know if he's going to fit into what Sean Payton wants to do offensively. Sean, with Drew Brees, has routinely asked his quarterback to play within the structure of the offense, getting the ball out of his hands pretty quickly. In the 2010s, Drew Brees was top 5 from average snap to throw time. Russell Wilson last year had an average snap to throw time of 2.95 seconds, which would put him in the bottom third of the NFL. So 8 Ball says doubtful in terms of Peyton fixing Brees. Fixing Wilson.
Okay, can Bryce Young hold up during a 17-game NFL season?
I'm going to say he can, and listen, I know he had some injury concerns at Alabama with the shoulder, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. The guy has shown that he can play at a high level and get his team to the championship. He's got a Heisman on his resume, so there's no reason to think that he can't, and whatever team drafts him is going to build an offense around protecting him first and foremost.
Can Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy reach a Super Bowl together?
I'm going to say they can't, and that's with a capital T. They've been together for some time now, 3 seasons, and they haven't gotten close to the championship rounds. I don't love the move of elevating Brian Schottenheimer to offensive coordinator. I don't look at this coaching staff as a better staff than what they had when they ended the regular season. So with that being said, I don't see them being able to make that leap.
Okay, now speaking of this, Dak had this to say about the Cowboys' new look offense, because as you know, big changes are happening on the offensive side of the ball in Dallas. Offensive coordinator Kellen Moore's out. So last week, Prescott talked to Yahoo Sports, and he said this. Right now, Mike McCarthy told me about 20 to 30% change. I think, if anything, it's things that need to be changed. Sometimes change is good. I'm a big believer in change. So, Jeff Darlington, I'll start with you. What are we going to learn about McCarthy and Dak this season?
Well, that's a great question. I think that ultimately it's about what we learn about McCarthy. Dak isn't going anywhere at this point. And look, when we look at the landscape of the way teams kind of put themselves together, the quarterback is the asset that's the most difficult to move on from. They can move on from a coach pretty easily. Doesn't count against the salary cap, just another rounding error in a billionaire's checkbook. So I just think in this scenario that we'll finally see, now that Kellen Moore is no longer the offensive coordinator and the offense is going to fall basically entirely on Mike McCarthy, whether he is the right fit for Dak Prescott. Look, I understand that some people might be down on Prescott, but I'm just saying right now, the quarterback is going to stay longer than the head coach in this situation.
That's a good point there. And Canty, when I look at this situation, I think Jeff makes an excellent point, but at the same time, you look at Dak, the interception problem that he had last year. Can he be fixed, no matter what you do with Mike McCarthy's role?
Well, I think Dak can be fixed, but I think it has a lot to do with the supporting cast that's around Dak. I think it's understated the impact that moving on from Amari Cooper had on this offense. He was one of those guys that you could rely on to beat man coverage. But in looking at Dak Prescott in the passing offense as a whole, Dak had 42% of the yards in the passing game come with yards after catch. You're talking about that being 26 among 31 qualified quarterbacks. They've got to find ways to get more easy yards for Dak Prescott in that passing game. And I think that's goes a long ways to mitigating some of the errors and some of the forced mistakes that we've seen from Dak Prescott in 2022.
Okay, you both are talking about how Dak needs to be helped in this situation. So, Mike, how specifically do you think this offense is going to look different when you go into next season?
Brian Schottenheimer is going to do a great job working with Dak Prescott in decision-making. Specifically, Dak had 17 interceptions. 11 of those were when they had the lead or the game was tied. I work with Brian New York. That will be unacceptable. His father was a legendary coach, Marty Schottenheimer, who was, Jeff, pay attention here, had strong proclivities against turning the ball over.
Here we go again.
When the game was tied 6-6 and it's 2nd and 2, and there's less than 2 minutes to go against the 49ers, you're not going to throw an interception. That is unacceptable. And here's an amazing stat from Hembo. Last year, Dak Prescott only threw the ball away 8 times compared to Jalen Hurts, who threw it away 32 times, and Patrick Mahomes 36. So if he just cleans up his decision-making, and I agree with Chris Canty, go replace Amari Cooper, re-sign Tony Pollard. But if Dak Prescott has better decision-making, this team will compete with Philadelphia, for the NFC East this year coming up.
All right, Jeff, go ahead, weigh in.
His wood smells like rich mahogany behind him, and he uses big words like proclivity. I can't say anything other than what he just said.
Well, Canty, look, if Dak can cut down on his proclivity to throw interceptions, how far can this team go?
Well, I think there's no question about it. When you consider them being able to retain Dan Quinn, that defense is going to be what wins the day for the Dallas Cowboys. But make no mistake about it, there are some things offensively that they have to do to complement their defense. And I think the most important thing is being able to stay on schedule, which means you've got to retool that run game. That offensive line is getting a little bit old, but they're still effective. You've got to find running backs that can take advantage of the space created by those guys up front. As much as Jerry Jones might love Ezekiel Elliott, his better days are behind him, and considering what his cap hit is, I think you move on from him. Tony Pollard has the injury to the ankle. They've got to find another running back that can be a different
game we like to call Believe It or Not. Canty, I'll start with you. Patrick Mahomes will return to the Super Bowl next season. Believe it or not?
I'm going to believe it, Ryan. I mean, he's been in the Super Bowl 3 of the last 4 years, and since he's become the starter, he's hosted the conference championship every single year. So if you're going to get to the Super Bowl, you got to be one of the Final Four. Pat Mahomes has done that every single season. No reason to think that he won't do it in 2023.
Yeah, there you go. Just playing the odds there. Jeff, Joe Burrow will win MVP next season. Believe it or not?
I don't believe it because I follow a very clear commandment when it comes to my beliefs in the NFL, and that is every year for the next 10 years, I will vote for Patrick Mahomes as the MVP of that year. It worked out for me this past year, and I believe it will continue to be fruitful. Not saying that Joe Burrow is not fully worthy of that award at some point in his career. I'm just saying preseason-wise, I'm always going with Pat Mahomes.
Nobody else gets an MVP preseason-wise. Just not fair. Mike Tannenbaum, the Bears should trade Justin Fields. Believe it or not?
Believe it. I follow a clear commandment. Take the better player. Bryce Young is the better football player than Justin Fields. So go draft Bryce Young and trade Justin Fields. He's a good player, but he's young, has some inconsistencies, but I'm taking the better football player.
Wow. Straight up the better player. How about that? Let's stop down on this and talk a little bit about Justin Fields and Bryce Young. Canty, what do you think of that? What should Chicago do with that first pick?
Well, I think the Bears should trade down and stockpile picks, but to Mike Tannenbaum's statement, I don't know how you definitively say that Bryce Young is a better player than Justin Fields. We've seen Justin Fields play in the National Football League and be highly productive, and if you look at the leap that he made from year 1 to year 2, he more than doubled his QBR, and then if you narrow down on his individual statistics, they compare quite favorably to what we saw from Jalen Hurts in his second season in the National Football League. So I think you've seen the quarterback have the dominant traits that lend themselves to having success in the National Football League. The biggest challenge for the Bears now is surrounding him with the requisite talent in order to compete at a high level. They got draft capital. They got a lot of cap space. Put pieces around Jalen Hurts to allow his natural talent to be a force multiplier for your organization.
So, Mike, respond to that.
In the last 2 years, Justin Fields has 140 sacks, fumbles, and interceptions. He's only played in 27 games and leads the NFL in those categories. That's not to say that he can't get better, because I believe he will, but his proclivities of turning the ball over is a concern. I've scouted Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young's ceiling is way higher than Justin Fields. My only concern is if someone like Chris Canty tackles Bryce Young, that's a concern. But beyond that, I think he has a chance to be a great player. I think Justin Fields has a chance to be a good player. Those negative plays, though, do concern me. And I think I could get a first-round pick for Justin Fields. So I'm going to take Bryce Young. I'm going to reset the quarterback clock. We just talked about that. That rookie quarterback clock, it's hugely consequential. When we're talking about $50 million or more, and now we can push that out 4 more years, and now we can recap cap space and a draft choice. I think for the totality of the situation, the Bears are better off with Young and trading Fields.
Man, if Chris Canty tackles anybody, I'd be concerned. We'd have to have a trainer right here on staff. Jeff, Jeff, lay out all the factors at play here. How does this all play out for you?
By the way, first of all, Tannenbaum did he say proclivities? He uses big words and it makes him sound smart. I don't even know what that means. Maybe I didn't even hear it right. But more importantly, I do think that this is a scenario where we will see the Bears do their homework. I think that there is a middle ground.